The Charlie Downs is with us. Charlie seems to join us almost on every Friday, it seems.
There's a nice little setup we've got.
Which is, we've got a bit of a setup going on, a bit of a thing happening at this end. Now, what we like about you coming on, Charlie, is that there was we went through a period of time, I think, in the media industry where if you brought somebody on to commentate about something, they were often about 78. Now, there's nothing wrong with being 78, by the way, and there are good arguments as to why someone who's 78 has got quite a lot going on, because they've experienced, several governments and incidents around the world. Yeah. I mean, I'm slightly exaggerating the point, but it was always pretty hard to find sort of younger commentators, and it's fair to say you're probably 2 or 3 years younger than me, so as a result of that we thought bring Charlie on. So we've, over the last few months, we've developed a sort of thing on the show of having some younger voices on, but with good big opinions, and this wasn't lost on somebody called Simon, who firstly says, can you be Prime Minister at the age of 16? Because you've just spoken to someone I would like as my Prime Minister. 16, that's a bit hard. I don't know where he got that from. You don't look 16. I mean, you're a young guy, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen.
But you ain't 16.
That we've got in here. I think the camera makes me look a bit younger with my, my clean-shaven look or whatever. But
maybe it's that.
I am a child of the early 2000s, I'll say that.
He says, and that's weird, by the way, he says, Charlie is everything this country needs. I agree with everything he's just said. The boy is strong and fearless. Top guest. Thank you, says Simon in Devon.
That's very kind of you to say. I mean, I do think it's interesting.
I'm assuming that's it is the same Simon, isn't it? Let's have a look at the... Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we can pretend it's two different people, so that, I can
yes, there's two people out there sharing this.
But no, I mean, there is this kind of emerging sort of little network of young conservative-minded people, basically. I have, friends of mine, Connor Tomlinson, Harrison Pitt. These are people who are very intelligent, very articulate, excellent on the issues, but belong, and I think this is the crucial thing, belong to an emerging political phenomenon that we're seeing actually across the West. Because if you look in countries across Europe, like France, Germany, for example, you've got political parties, political movements emerging, like the AfD, like the National Rally, that are broadly youth-led. If you look at their marketing and their materials, it's all young people getting involved in these things. And that's interesting because young people are typically thought of as being liberally minded and kind of, radical, fight the power and that sort of thing. But I think what a lot of young people are realising is that to be radical in this day and age is to be right-wing, basically. Because all of the various institutions, from the schools, the universities, the government, the corporations, they all feed you this kind of sterilised liberal...
It's all sewn up, isn't it?
This bought and paid for pre-packaged set of beliefs.
Yeah, sort of cut and paste job of everything.
And you just take them off. Yeah, you take them off the shelf. And this is things like the identity politics type stuff, the climate change stuff. This is all stuff that is completely bought and paid for.
You're upsetting me now, Charlie.
I know. Yeah. But I think that's what's so refreshing is a lot of young people are realising this and waking up to the fact and kind of rebelling against it.
What about in your circle of mates, though? Because I've got quite a mixed group of mates, so there's some obvious lefties. You're going to get some of those. Some people who are, to the right of Donald Trump. Quite a lot of those, actually. And then some who are just, kind of not that opiniated on current affairs.
Well, my friends outside of the kind of political and media spheres are generally apolitical, to be honest. And that's, I quite like that, to be honest, because it means that I'm not. I know people who are just completely immersed in politics all the time.
And then you sound really clever because there's no one else saying it, don't you?
But I don't know if that's healthy for people. But I think certainly my male friends, actually, I will say this. My male friends tend to, at least in a nascent kind of way, lean right. Because I think they can sense what's going on. They can sense that the liberal, quote-unquote woke stuff is just completely not in their interest or in their family's interest or in their future's interest. And so there is this kind of emerging, and I think this was the case at the general election with reform, by the way. 1 in 10 under-30s voted for reform.
Correct.
And sure, half of under-30s voted for Labour, but that's kind of to be expected, I think, because we were basically fed the idea that Labour are definitely going to win, and people just kind of fall in line.
And they're going to make life amazing.
Well, that as well.
And they didn't. And in fact, here's a great example of it. Household energy bills set to jump 21 quid in January, leaving pensioners, many people, but particularly pensioners, more worried for their health after the winter. Fuel payments were, of course, pulled. Let's have a listen to a call that Peter Cardwell took on his show yesterday regarding this situation.
I can't afford to put my heating
Have you not your heating on today, Teresa?
No, not at all.
Goodness me.
I'm living in one room with a little heater. How are these people going to manage? Do they really want us all dead? Because even with the fuel allowance, it's not enough to keep you warm all year. It's horrible. absolutely horrible.
Teresa, I am so sorry that you have to make these choices. I'm so sorry.
I know, but it's about time they woke up and realised. I mean, I worked for 47 years. I wish I'd never.
And someone in that situation, Charlie, who many people who either lived through the war or the years after the war, could never have imagined that at this stage in the 21st century they will be struggling to heat their house. That's to me one of the most powerful takes on this.
Well, I think people forget this. I mean, that was a really heartbreaking clip to hear that. But, we forget, I think this is certainly easy, again, back to sort of people my kind of age, it's easy to forget that most of our parents and grandparents grew up in a world totally, almost unimaginably different to the one that we've grown up in. And that's stark, because I think that there was a sense among, certainly my parents' generation, kind of children of the 70s and 80s, late 21st century, grew up on a diet of, Ferris Bueller and Back to the Future and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
The idea that the future was something positive, something optimistic, and that we were looking forward to this kind of promising, bright, exciting
you're in
future.
forward gear, not reverse gear.
Yeah, and now that the future has arrived, it's actually a lot more bleak than I think anybody was ever expecting. And so I think that's why there is this attitude among, again, people my kind of age that is a lot more cynical, but also a lot more realistic. Because you look at the way that our governing class treat our country, and it isn't, I mean, obviously pensioners have been hit specifically by the cutting of the winter fuel allowance, and that's very bad, I think, that's wrong. But it's everyone, it's everyone that's being hit by the way that our style of politics governs the country. This isn't just Labour. This is also the Conservative Party of the last 14 years and Labour again before them, and it goes back decades, this problem, because there is just no prioritisation of us, ultimately. I mean, and this is what I was saying when it comes to Israel and Ukraine and so on. There's no sort of concept in the minds of our elites that the most important thing is Britain, that the most important constituency is the British. This is also, you can also say this with mass immigration, the idea that it's our duty as a nation to put up, all of the sort of the hungry mouths of the world in our country at the taxpayer's expense. I mean, it's nonsensical. But in my mind, there is maybe no more important duty for a government to undertake than to deliver cheap, ubiquitous energy to the country, because energy is everything. Yeah. Energy is what makes the world go round, literally. And if we can't even do that, then, I mean, can we even call ourselves a first world country?
Well, fair point. Just a final one to finish on. Briefly on this one, Charlie. We're getting more detail about some of these non-crime hate incidents.
Oh, yeah.
What they involve. This, of course, all really came around because of Alison Pearson, the Telegraph journalist. Her case wasn't a non-crime hate incident, but it certainly sparked the debate because it was something that was said and then deleted, by the way, on social media ages ago. But some of the new ones include the German woman who was offended by being likened to a Rottweiler, a person upset about hair length being mocked, and a customer's complaint about an aggressive, rough haircut. A lot of haircut detail here. Which apparently was linked to a Ukraine discussion, was logged as hate incidents by the City of London Police. We now know there's 13,000 of these incidents that have been recorded by police over the last years, which raises a big concern about, police waste of time and the like.
Look, I mean, my takeaway with this issue is actually like, look, I don't want to sound horrible, but if you give people an inch, and we both know what people are like, right? Yeah. If you give people an inch, they will do this sort of thing. If you give a certain type of person, the opportunity to make a complaint or to make a fuss, then they will take it. And the fact is, those sorts of people are actively enabled and empowered by our police force, certainly in London. Because again, people don't realise that Sadiq Khan, the buck stops with him when it comes to the police. He's the PCC for London. And so this is all essentially downstream from him and the style of politics that he represents, which is a particularly vindictive and nasty left-wing view of the world, where he does seem to think that these kinds of completely inconsequential, ultimately thought crimes, are more important than the rapes and the stabbings and the assaults and stuff and the robberies that go uninvestigated and unsolved in his city. And it's getting worse and worse week on week, the crime in this city. And I'm fortunate, I work here, but I don't live here. But it's literally like every time I come here, it's worse. The graffiti, the homelessness, the litter, all of it. And yet this is what he's wasting taxpayers' money.
But yes, you don't hear Mr. Khan opining on these kind of things. You hear him opining on things like hate and cars that have got the wrong engine in them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
They seem to be his favourite. Staff's kids doesn't seem to really quite make the league table.
Sadiq Khan is a small man, both physically and spiritually, who has got completely above his station, and thinks it's his place to, as you say, opine on geopolitics and on how we should be governing our country, forgetting that he does not represent the views of most of this country. Indeed. He belongs to a very, very particular political faction, which is extremely radical and absolutely doesn't seem to have the interests of the native British. Obviously, only 37% of whom are actually living in London at this point, or rather 37% of Londoners are native British, I should say. He doesn't have those interests at heart at all. No. He's given to these abstract ideals which actually make life harder for ordinary people.
100%. Listen, Charlie, we've hit the clock, but thank you.
Always a pleasure.